All right. Hi, everyone. We're still just waiting for everyone to come in. Wonderful to see you all.
Our bouncer is currently working the door and making sure that that nobody's bringing in any weaponry or beverages that aren't allowed.
And if Josh Schwenk and Terrison are in the house, please identify yourselves. All right. Everybody, welcome, welcome. So it's 7:03. Mitch, do you want to get us started? What do you think?
Yeah, I don't see anybody left in the waiting room. So yeah, why don't we get underway? Oh, now there are two people in the waiting room, just as I say that.
I got them.
Okay.
Just get going. Welcome, everybody.
All right. Welcome to the Howl. I'm Mitch Tyke. I'm the station manager at North Country Public Radio, and delighted to have everybody here. Natalie Thill from the Adirondack Center for Writing is in the Zoom room directly to my left. I don't know where she shows up on your Zoom room, but we're really thrilled to be able to do our third virtual Howl of the season, which has been the last year or so. It's been really a great way to keep the Howl going and to make sure that the spirit of storytelling goes on in the North Country, even during these times when it's difficult for us all to be together. Fortunately, I feel like we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, and maybe we can get back to doing these in person sometime soon. In the meantime, welcome to my closet in Potsdam, New York. And it's amazing how many people I can fit in here. Just down the hall from my shower. And so, if things get really steamy, you'll know why. Anyway, we have a great set of storytellers joining us tonight, and we have judges standing by. And Natalie, do you want to go over the ground rules?
Sure. Welcome, everybody. I'm Natalie from the Adirondack Center for Writing. It's so wonderful to see you all here. The sun is setting, so no one's going to feel bad about missing this gorgeous day. So these are the rules for the Grand Slam, this open mic. It always feels so much more like a Grand Slam when it's on virtual. The judges will be judging these storytellers on 3 criteria: adherence to time, and the time limit is 5 minutes. Adherence to the theme, and tonight's theme is March Madness. What does that mean? It can mean absolutely anything you want it to mean, basically. It could be sports related, it could be just madness, it could be spring. We chose it specifically because it's such an open theme. And the last and the hardest to describe is the quality of the story. And so we will be giving a first prize to one of our storytellers today, and that storyteller will be able to perform at our Grand Slam whenever that is. It will be in Saranac Lake and it will be in Town Hall. We just don't know when. And I think that is the only thing I have to tell you. Oh, the other rules about the stories: no notes, they have to be true, and no props. Other than that, have a great time. And I think that's all I have to tell you. If not, I'll think of it later and pop in. But welcome. And I know this is a little dry. Oh, here's one more thing. It's really hard to tell a story or even give rules for a story on a Zoom, because you're used to getting audience feedback. So since you all can't laugh and chit chat and everything, we have you on mute. Please feel free to use the chat and put your responses in there. It really does help, and it just kind of pushes everybody along. Okay, so chat everybody up and welcome.
Can I jump in really quick, Natalie?
Oh, yeah, sure.
There's
go ahead.
also, if you look in the lower corner of your screen, you should see something that says reactions. And so you can do virtual applause, as I am doing here, or a virtual thumbs up, or virtual heart. There are a number of them. So it's not quite the same as uproarious applause, but if somebody's telling a story and they see a whole bunch of hands or thumbs up, it's almost as good.
It'll do the trick. All right, you guys all ready for your first storyteller? Yep. All right, our very first storyteller tonight. Please welcome from Scotia, Susan Shetler. Yay! You got to unmute yourself. Okay.
Okay, I got it. So tonight, I'm going to tell you a story about my personal March Madness. It happened 33 years ago yesterday. I woke up with pains at about 2 in the morning, called my doctor. He said, yeah, I should start making my way to the hospital. A history of a 30-hour labor with my firstborn son made my husband and I feel like we had plenty of time to get there. So he went downstairs, had a cup of coffee. I started to slowly get dressed. We didn't wake my son. And then suddenly things changed. The pains got a lot stronger and a lot closer. Now I yell downstairs, we have to go now. My husband runs up, grabs my son, my suitcase. I call my friend that tell her we're on our way over. She's about 10 minutes away to drop off my son, and off we go. On the way to her house, the pains get even stronger and even closer together. They're about 3 minutes apart now. She is waiting for us at her door when we arrive, and I have to give my husband credit. He took my son out of the back seat of the car and basically did a free throw into her waiting arms. Now we're off. The pains are literally coming one after the other, and I'm starting to panic. You see, I have experience with a car birth. I was born in the back seat of my father's Packard. My mother, my father, my grandmother were on the way to the rural doctor's office when I was born. He came out to the car when we got there, took one look at my quiet gray body, and told my mother I had not survived. My mother insisted I had cried once. So the story goes, he picked me up, ran into his office, rubbed my little body so hard with alcohol they thought my skin was going to come off, until I started to turn the rosy pink of determination. Now, I was determined to get to Albany Med to have a safe delivery of my own daughter. My husband did a full court press against the traffic lights. They were all red, I swear. He would turn on the flashers, do a quick glance right and left, and then zoom on through, because over to his right, I was going, go, go, go. We finally made it to the Albany Med parking lot by labor and delivery, and my water broke. I'm not talking about a dribble here. Immediately, I felt a need to push. Luckily, I had trained well in my Lamaze class and knew how to use my breath to avoid the push. My husband ran in, got a wheelchair, came down this huge flight of stairs, that's the entry to labor and delivery, and helped me get in it, and then headed back to the stairs. One look, and I'm like, there is no way we're making it up those stairs with a wheelchair. I glanced to the left, saw the ER sign at the far end of the parking lot, pointed and said, go. Now he's doing a fast break to the ER entrance. As we burst through the doors, I am screaming, the baby's coming, the baby's coming. They rushed me into the elevator full of people, the slowest elevator on earth. And now I am thinking, all right, I'm going to have the baby here in the elevator, but at least there's some medical people around to help. The nurse, very calmly next to me, said, it's okay, honey, just breathe. And I said, you breathe, well, you fill in the blank. I don't want a technical foul here. We finally get to labor and delivery. They take me into the delivery room, rip off my lower garments and say, she's ready. Well, I knew that. I gave about 2 pushes, and there was my howling, healthy, 9 pound, 5 ounce bouncing baby girl. My husband and I had really made a good team. This was a slam dunk. It was also madness to the max. But out of that madness was the most miraculous event in life. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Susan.
You're
And it is a good thing you didn't give birth in the elevator, lest you had to name your daughter Otis. um, Thanks. Here all night. And great basketball metaphors all the way through that. Really in the spirit of March Madness. So our next speaker is a veteran of both March Madness and the Howl. Please welcome from Canton, New York, Aaron Todd.
Thank you, Mitch. And I just have to say to start things off that the odds of this story preceding mine are about the same odds of a 16 seed defeating a 1 seed. I've worked in college athletics for most of my professional life. So I've had my share of March Madness, but really nothing compares to the madness that I experienced in March of 2011. Exactly 10 years ago to the minute, my wife and I were sitting in a room in Mount Auburn Hospital awaiting the birth of our twin children. And, earlier in the week, she'd been at her doctor and the doctor had said, you're 38 and a half weeks. That's enough time for these twins to cook. It's time to get the buns out of the oven. So we went into Mount Auburn for, the induction of labor. And induction of labor takes a while. So we knew, quite opposite to Susan's experience, that we were going to be there a while. We arrived on the night of March 19th, knowing that the children would be born on the 20th, and we had a long night ahead of us. There's drugs to be administered, and there's all this prep that needs to be done to start labor when it's not going to get started on its own. And we tried to sleep as best we could, but it was not easy because Wendy was there was an IV and there were beeping instruments, and she had 2 heart rate monitors attached to her belly with 13 and a half pounds of child sloshing around in there. And the children were moving and the heart rate monitors would move. And every time the heart rate monitor would lose one of the heart rates, a panic nurse would run in and make sure that, things were connected again to make sure that everything was fine. I don't think we slept more than 10 consecutive minutes all night, and probably less than an hour on the whole. So we were worn out by the time the next day came around. But, as labor started to ramp up, we knew that, the adrenaline started to kick in of, okay, this is going to happen. We're going to go from a family of 3, we had a 4-year-old at home, to a family of 5. We were going to be switching from a double team defense where it was 2-on-1 with 2 parents and 1 child to a zone. We were skipping man to man altogether. We were going to be outnumbered 3-2. So we were excited. We were nervous. Labor started to kick up and get more intense. And it was at that point that the doctor said, Wendy, if you want an epidural, it's now or never. We are going to reach the point of no return. And she said, sign me up. I want all the things that are going to eliminate the pain. And I was on board with that. I said, yes, absolutely. Let's do this. And in Massachusetts, I don't know what the laws are in New York, but in Massachusetts, when they administer an epidural, they actually ask whoever's accompanying the mother to leave the room. Apparently there was some dad at some point that had passed out when he saw the needle that was going to go into his wife's back, and the hospitals didn't want to deal with the liability. So I was escorted by a nurse out of the delivery room into a lobby and told to sit down and that she would come back and get me when it was time for me to return. Well, I sat down in what felt like the most comfortable chair I've ever sat in. And I'd say in the space of about 30 seconds, my eyes closed and I fell asleep. I have no idea how much time passed. No idea. I know it was enough for me to for me to leave consciousness. I was in a deep, deep, deep sleep. And enough so that when the nurse grabbed my forearm and shook it to wake me up, I was very startled. I jumped out of the chair and she said, it's time. And I wiped the sleep out of my eyes, and I went back in. Now, remember when I went in, labor, the intensity was starting to pick up, but it wasn't like crazy. Well, things had changed. When I entered the delivery room once again, there were nurses everywhere. The doctor was giving orders, do this, do that. And Wendy was laying on her side, clearly in distress. And I went over and I said, "Are you okay? What's wrong?" And she said, "No." I said, "What? Well, what's wrong? What happened?" And she said, "When they put in the epidural, they missed." And I said, "What does that mean?" And she said, "It means that one side of my body is completely numb and I feel everything on the other side." So the solution was that they flipped her on her side with the numb side at the top so that hopefully everything would run down, gravity would do the work. Well, she didn't get much of a chance to lie there because labor was progressing pretty quickly. And within just a few minutes, our second child, Brendan, was born. And 5 minutes later, Lillian followed. And they turned 10 years old tomorrow. And while I may have almost slept through their birth, I can say that I'm so happy that I haven't slept through the first 10 years of their lives. And I'm so excited to see what they do with the next 10 and the next 10 and the next 10. Thank you.
Yay. That was fantastic. Thank you so much for that story. I'm pretty sure just flipping your wife onto the side was not a solution that anyone was excited to hear. And I'm not even sure that person was a doctor. Like, there's no way that was medical advice. I think you might want to like check some things out. All right, so that was a crazy coincidence that there are two very similar themed stories. I'm loving all the pregnancy. I had to come up with a pregnant silence, so like I don't know, I'm loving all the puns. We're all nerds here at the Howl, in case that's not evident. So any kind of pun makes just all of us very, very happy. All right, so next up we have Linda McKenney from Gainesville. Yay!
Hey, I'm not going to talk about birth. So to celebrate our 5th wedding anniversary, which is in March, my husband and I decided to go on a Windjammer barefoot cruise. We were really excited because neither one of us had ever been on a cruise before. And this was a small ship with only 32 passengers. So many of the ports would be small deserted islands with glorious beaches, which actually turned out some of the passengers would swim topless. But that's not part of this story. We booked our flight out of Albany and with a connecting flight would arrive in Grenada a few hours before we departed. The ship only sailed at night, and every time the crew hoisted the sails, they would play a version of Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound. Departure day. We parked in the economy lot, which is the furthest one away from the terminal. We checked our bags and we headed to security. We had plenty of time because we had arrived at my husband's preferred 2 hours before departure. As we got close to security, I began fumbling in my purse looking for my ID. And as I did so, a feeling of dread consumed me. I had forgotten my ID. You see, that morning, I had switched purses from my large everything in the world version to a small travel purse. I could picture my little wallet with my ID sitting on my dining room table. I stepped out of line and delivered the not so good news to my husband. And then I made a painful decision. I'm going home to get my ID, and I want you to stay here and get on that flight, whether I get back in time or not. Well, he was reluctant, but it made sense. For one thing, all of our luggage was on that plane. I started walking as fast as I could. Now, if you ask anyone in my family, they will tell you that running is not in my physical repertoire. Once on the shuttle back to that furthest away lot, I called my daughter, Danae, and I asked her to go to my home, get my ID, and wait there for me to drive me back to the airport to save me time. And when I hung up, I realized that I had to go to the bathroom, but I shoved that urge down. This was a skill I learned when my children were toddlers. The shuttle driver had overheard the conversation and he kindly dropped me right at my car. I drove the 18 miles to my home as fast as I could. Danae was there waiting with the engine running. I hurried out of my car and I got into hers. And as she backed down the driveway, that bathroom warning light came on again, but I ignored it because that's what we do with warning lights, right? Time was of the essence. She drove to the airport in a manner that if I were a good mother, I would have told her to slow down, but I did not. As we got close to the airport, I realized that my flight was probably boarding. She pulled up to the curb and I leapt out of the car. Well, sort of leapt because leaping isn't in my physical repertoire either. I sailed through security and a miracle happened. I started a Chariots of Fire run down the concourse. I could see this man in the distance waving his arms. And as I got closer, I realized it was my husband, indicating for me to slow down. When I got to him, he put his arms around me, hugged me, and said, "The flight's been delayed." Well, I almost cried with relief. And after I stopped my heavy breathing, the need to go to the restroom returned with a vengeance. And so I hurried off to the restroom. And as I was entering, a man was exiting. And I thought to myself, wow, he must be really embarrassed to have found himself in the ladies' room. And then I saw the urinals. That's it.
I do believe in all of the howls that I have attended, that is the first story that has ever ended with, and then I saw the urinals. Another great story, and actually another story that involved heavy breathing. So we're 3 for 3 so far tonight, and we still have a whole bunch of stories to go. So thank you so much, Linda, and I think we're all jealous of your background right now. Before we get any further, we had a couple other people sign up, and I just want to make sure that none of them is in the audience waiting to speak. Do we have either Joshua Swink or Terracin, I guess it's Dupuis from Saranac Lake, here with us yet? Okay, seeing no response to that. If you are here, feel free to contact us in the chat. But otherwise, we will plow forward and welcome our next speaker, who comes to us from Latham. Please give a warm welcome to Eileen Mack.
Thank you. So my story of March Madness isn't exactly my story, but I portrayed the woman who this story is about. I have told those who will carry me when I close my eyes for the final time to bury me in some wild mountain valley where the wind will, through the pines, sing a requiem over me. Where the wind will, through the pines, sing a requiem over me. Interesting that Jean Robert Foster used those words to describe where she wanted to be buried. Where the wind will sing through the pines. She was born on March 10th. And on March 9th, Dr. Wallace Aldrich got word that Frank Oliver had sent word that his wife, Lizzie, needed his assistance. Well, it was snowing gently as he hitched the horse up to the sleigh. And fortunately, the March afternoon, days were getting a little bit longer, so he might actually make it to the Oliver place before it was completely dark. And as the bells on the horse jingled and the snow fell softly, the wind began to blow. And by the time he reached the house of Frank Oliver, Frank dashed out the door, took the horse and said, "She needs you." And Dr. Wallace Aldrich went inside. Now, Dr. Wallace Aldrich had graduated from Dartmouth Medical School. When he made his choice of where he wanted to practice, he wanted to be a country doctor, and he found a posting in Minerva, New York, in the southeast corner of the Great North Woods we now call the Adirondacks. Many of his classmates thought this was madness. They were going off to establish their practices in Boston and New York City and Philadelphia. They were Dartmouth College graduates. But Dr. Wallace Aldrich picked Minerva, New York. Now, who knew that day that this child that would be born, the neighbors would say, "It's a pity what a homely child she is." But she went on to have her face on the cover of Vanity Fair magazine. She was the Harrison Fisher girl, and she was a Charles Dana Gibson model. She became a poet, a writer, an editor, a pioneer social worker. And as she made her way across metropolitan Europe, she danced in the arms of the president of Czechoslovakia, dressed in an ermine shawl and a silk dress. She spent time with Eric Satie, the musician. He dedicated a song to her. She golfed with Brancusi, the sculptor. She was friends with Ford Madox Ford, with the finest writers and artists that existed at the beginning of the 20th century. That day, that March 9th day, Dr. Wallace Aldrich tended the mother and eventually brought her safely through the delivery of the child. And when the child appeared, he wrapped it in a blanket and set it in a box by the window and took care of the mother. Her first birth, it had been rough. It had been very difficult. And when he got her settled in, he went back to check the box and expected to present the body of a baby. But that night, that March wind had gotten stronger and stronger. It had rattled the windows. It had shaken the shingles on the roof. And it had poured and seeped its way through the windows and through the chinks in the wall. And it had breathed itself into that baby girl. And that Julie Oliver grew up in the North Woods, where the mountains and the trees flowed like courage through her blood and helped her make her way through her 93 years of life. And it was a bit of March Madness. But it turned out to be a beautiful life, a powerful life. That's it.
Yay! Thank you so much. I'm sorry, there were so many pauses that I was like, I was never sure when.
I'm sorry.
No, it was my fault. That's why I like waited for a good long time. It felt like at church, I was like, oh.
Well, yeah, my last sentence didn't come out exactly right. So you would have known better if I'd gotten that right.
No, it was lovely. Thank you so much. And now we're moving on to man, just it wouldn't be a Howl if it didn't have Derek Conway. Derek's joining us from Rensselaer Falls, and he is one of like, just a really wonderful, great guy. So enjoy yourselves. Yay.
Hello. I'm so competitive. I want to give birth or something right now so I can top those stories, but I can't. I mean, I have the belly for it, but it's food, not fetus. Okay, so when we saw this topic, I wasn't quite sure. When I think of March Madness, I'm not a sports person, but I thought of basketball, and my girlfriend was like, "Oh, but it could be anything." She's such an optimist. It's she's like, "It could be madness. It could be this." So I guess I'll kind of talk about my March Madness routine here at the house. So I know you try not to get too excited. All right. So when March comes up here, of course, we start getting our thaws, and the snow starts going away most of the time. And well, we have 3 dogs. We just last year got a blue tick hound puppy who's like 70 some pounds now, bigger than our other dogs. And when we have the snow, we have a small little dog yard out in the back, and that's where they do their business. And well, as the snow falls, of course, we get nice fresh area for them to use and all, which is lovely. It looks so nice and white. And well, then as springtime comes and March approaches, it starts to melt away. And with each day of melt, we get a little more reveal each day of the past winter's deposits, shall we say. And by the final time, the dogs will go to the door. I always know when it's almost completely done, because we'll go to let the dogs out. We open our back door, and they all just stop at the door and look up at us and go, "Are you kidding me? Would you go out there?" Like, we know our paws are small, but they're not that small. But anyway, so that's one of the things that comes out. But also, I'm retired, so I have lots of projects that I start and I do. Last year's project was I needed a bigger shed. I'm gonna start building furniture. It's amazing the things I'm gonna do. I'll probably just hide out there when my girlfriend's mad at me, but I'm gonna be making furniture. So anyways, I built this shed in my backyard, and as winter comes on, you start trying to get the last minute things done and all, and getting pieces on the outside and get it all buttoned up, which I did, but I didn't do anything with the inside. I hadn't gotten to that. So I just have tools strewn all over the floor, and I was like, well, I'll come out every once in a while during the winter and I'll do a little bit here and there. And then when springtime comes, I'll only have a little bit to finish up. Well, I was very busy this winter. There was lots of binge television to see. So I didn't make it out there. The couple of times I did go out there, I got out there, I started using tools, and I realized they're way too cold to hold for any amount of time. So I come back in. So I didn't get much of that done. So now I have a shed just strewn with sawdust from last year and pieces of metal that I was putting on and tools everywhere. So now, before I can start the finish up project, I have to do the cleanup project, which also includes all the stuff in the yard, all the wood that I was cutting, because I was just cutting wood and I leave the scraps in a pile, and I'm gonna have a big bonfire with those at the end of the summer last year, and then that first snow comes and wrecks all your plans. It gets all the wood wet, it covers it over, and you're like, oh, well, if I get a thaw, I'll go right out there, I'll get it started. That didn't happen either. So now I have tons of wood everywhere that I have to clean up before I start cutting new wood and things. And of course, there's some miscellaneous things. I was working on my tailgate for my truck, so that and the new tailgate that I'm switching parts, they're on the ground out there too. And they need to be cleaned up. And this is every March. It's not, I sound like, oh, this was just last year. Every year I start a project out there and I get almost done every year. And then the winter comes and I just go, oh, I'll start it next year. I'll get on it early. And it never seems to happen that the early part comes. And then as it's getting cold and warm, thanks, Bailey. And as it's getting cold and warm, you're thinking, oh, well, it'll be nicer tomorrow. And you don't do something, you do it halfway. And of course, it rains tomorrow every time. I went out and started cleaning up the backyard, the deposits, and I got them all in a wheelbarrow. And I said, well, I'll empty that tomorrow. That was 2 days ago, and it rained yesterday. So now I have a wheelbarrow of deposit soup. Lovely image. Sorry to end with that one, but this is my March Madness that I bring on myself every year, and I'm sure it'll be the same thing next year. And if anyone would like to come and help me with my March Madness, thanks, Nally, for that shake of no confidence. Have a good evening, people. Thank you for listening.
I'll have to say this, Derek, I would help you, except that I actually flagged today because it was below freezing all day as the last probable day that I could go out and clean the deposits from our dog from our gravel driveway. And my wife, who was in attendance this evening, can attest I spent probably a good 45 minutes out there over the course of the day cleaning up deposits.
Yeah, it generally takes me about 3 days to get the job completely done each year. And it's just, now that like I said, we got that new dog and he's a little bit bigger than our other ones, and he performs really well in that area. So thank you.
Bringing new meaning to the term "no deposit, no return."
Yeah, he just deposits.
Well, I just want to thank you, first of all, Derek, and thank everybody who is here. We're up to, I think, 70 or 75 people that are joining us tonight. I wanted to welcome people who have joined us over the course of the hour. We still have a couple more speakers to go in this, our third virtual Howl. And up next on the list, we are joined by Judy England McCarthy from Linden.
Hi, March is my birthday month. And when I was 16, now 16, I think 16 is like a betwixt and between age. Because when you're 16, you think you're an adult, but you're not a kid, and you're definitely not an adult. So I was babysitting my 7-year-old nephew, and I was feeling quite mature. And I had decided, since my sister had told me she'd be out all night, and she was okay with me sleeping while she was out, as long as the doors were locked and everything, but I was going to be the mature babysitter, and I was going to stay up until she got home, but she wouldn't be getting home until like 4 or 5 or 6 or maybe even 7 in the morning, but I knew I could do it. So I got a book that I had been trying to read, and I was about a quarter of the way through, and it was a Stephen King book called The Shining. And there I was in the chair reading The Shining. And about 1 o'clock, I was about 3/4 of the way through, and I thought, oh, I can do this. I can finish the book. Now, it was the upper floor of a 2-family home, and it was a rambling kind of home. And I was not hearing any of the noises because I was so absorbed in the book. And it wasn't until I turned the last page, which was at 4 o'clock in the morning, that I started to hear noises. Now, again, I'm 16 and I know life. I've experienced life. So I know when I hear rattling noises in the house, it's just a house that's old and it's rattling. However, then I heard it. Breathing down the hall. And I'm like, no, there can't be breathing down the hall. So I just sat quietly in the chair and I waited. Okay, now I'm going to date myself. We had a rotary phone. So I picked up that phone and I started dialing my sister because I'm hearing breathing down the hall and I've listened twice, okay? By the time I got to the 7th number and it was going back, I realized that it was 4 o'clock in the morning and that my sister would kill me if I called her at 4 o'clock in the morning and I wasn't dead. So I decided I'd hang up. And I listened again. This time I got to the 8th number. And then I stopped myself and I said, okay, I'm going to go down the hall and find out what it is so that it can all be finished. Now I picked up one of those big, huge votive candles because that was going to be my weapon against this breathing down the hall. And then I got down the hall and I'm listening and I'm stopping every few seconds because, you know, I want to make sure I'm not being ludicrous because now I'm 16 and I'm mature. And then I get to my nephew's room, open the door, nothing there but my nephew sleeping. Close the door. Now get to the bathroom. Open the door, nothing there, close the door. There's only one room left and this is the kitchen. So I get to the door of the kitchen. I have my votive candle. I'm looking around. Nobody there. But you see, my sister had built a bar. And behind this bar, this breathing was occurring. So now I had to get across the kitchen without making a noise. And they were wooden floors. And so I grabbed the votive and I'm trying not to squeak with the floor. And then I go, ah! And there was nobody there. I look straight in front of me. The window is open and there's a screen and the wind is coming in going. Now, you may think that the moral of this story is that beware the dangers of a good book, but it isn't. It is March Madness can take control. I hope you enjoyed the story.
Yay. My daughter heard scratching not too long ago, and she actually grabbed, it was a candle situation that she picked up to protect herself. So it's not just you. It's really funny.
That's good to know. But I was so grateful that we didn't have the instant phones we do now, because I would have gotten my sister and I would probably not be here today. So it's a good thing.
That is true. That is true. It's really funny. That made me think of, I'm not allowed to say this because I'm not supposed to be telling a story, but one time my friend was babysitting and she was like, oh, come visit us. And we're in high school and my friend and I like saw her through the window and we're like, oh, you know, it'd be really funny to walk into this perfect stranger's house where she's babysitting and like surprise her because she was sitting there watching TV in the dark, you know. We thought it'd be really funny. So we go through the back door and we're like walking like this and we're like, and we're walking, we go through the kitchen, we go through the dining room, we go through the living room, and we see my friend and we're like feet from her. We're like walking, tiptoeing and giggling and this and that. I was feet from her and all of a sudden I just stopped and my friend Martha like bumped right into me and I was like, that's not Patty. It was the woman, like she came back and we tiptoed back. She never knew. The woman never knew that two teenage girls snuck in, walked straight through her house, were 10 feet away from her, and then snuck back out. She never moved. Hi, that was me telling a story.
That was priceless. I love it.
I know, but I often wonder, like, has that ever happened to me? Like, is there someone in my house that I am unaware of, like just stopping? And we were like giggling, like, I can't believe she didn't hear us, but she was just vegged out in front of the TV and never noticed. All right, sorry, I wasn't supposed to tell the story. Anyway,
and that was breathing. So we have another breathing.
Yes. There's all kinds of breathing. Okay, so this is our last storyteller for this evening. Happens to be one of my favorite people and storytellers in the world. So please put all your little like clappy hands together for Jerry McGovern, who is joining us from Peru. Yay!
Okay, Natalie, I just wanted to mention before I started that I wanted to say hey to Eileen Mack again, and also to Ona, who is out there. And these are old friends and colleagues from Peru Central. So it's good to see them. But anyway, I'm not sure when March Madness, the basketball tournament, started being called March Madness. But the madness is also got a bit of disappointment and regret, it seems to me, because there's 68 teams in that basketball tournament. 67 are going to lose. And so there's got to be a lot of disappointment, and there's got to be a lot of feeling of regret. I put my money, my $20 into the pool the other day, and you know, I made my picks. I picked Gonzaga to win the whole thing, which is not really creative. I think they're the favorite. They were undefeated. I also picked for sort of sentimental reasons, and because I had a really good time there, I picked Colgate to win, and I was hoping that they would win their first game in a NCAA tournament. They didn't. They lost this afternoon. So that also not only disappointed me, but it also meant that I wasn't going to have a bracket that was filled out perfect. And, you know, I wasn't going to pick a winner for every single game, which is not surprising. The chance of picking all of the winners is 1 in 9 quintillion. I do these numbers in my head, actually, in case you're wondering. But anyway, 1 in 9 quintillion, which is about the same as the possibility of Democrats and Republicans working together in the Senate, or Schumer and Mitch McConnell going out on a double date. So it's really not likely. So I didn't win that because Colgate lost today. But then I was thinking about odds and such things. And I was thinking, what about, and this is going to echo some other stories tonight from Aaron and Susan. I'm going to think of, what about if it's not about basketball, it's babies? And what about if it's not a pool for a, you know, in the office, it's a gene pool. So it's 1971, it's March 16th. I'm sitting in my Mustang on Court Street in Plattsburgh, New York. I'm singing to my daughter, Lauren, who's about 1.5 years, and she's in the back seat. I'm singing to try to keep her quiet and happy because her mother, my wife, Barbara, is inside talking to Dr. Del Bell. Barbara's pregnant. I haven't met Dr. Del Bell. This is the old days. We've not been, you know, men are not sensitive yet. So I don't know anything about pregnancies or birthing or anything. It's just not part of my job. I did my job, and everything is going forward from there. So I'm trying to keep Lauren entertained, and soon Barbara comes out and she's absolutely, she looks dreadful. And she's trying to button her trench coat over her very large belly. And she gets into the Mustang and she sits down and she looks in the back to see if my music, my singing has damaged Lauren in any way. And then she stares straight ahead and she's still dreadfully pale. And I say, because I'm trying to be helpful, I say, do you want to go to Dairy Queen? We could get cheeseburgers. And so then nothing happens, and I say, how about we could get a Buster Bar? And still nothing. And then she says, we're going home. We're going to get my bag. We're going to have you go across the street, talk to Philomena, have her take care of Lauren. Then we're going to the hospital. And I said, okay, now, today, this afternoon, she says, we're going to have twins. This was a total surprise. Nobody had said anything. This was the 9th month. And in case, we were talking about odds earlier about, it's not a quintillion, it's about 3%, but it's still absolutely shocked the hell out of us. And so we went to a home, then we went to the hospital. And at 5 minutes after 12, Colleen was born on March 17th, St. Patrick's Day. And on 12/12, Brian was born. And the two of them weighed about 14 pounds. And, for a moment, I thought of, our grandparents coming from County Cork and County Cavan and County Tipperary a while ago. But then soon I wasn't thinking of anything in the past. I was thinking only of the present, because we were so monumentally unprepared for these children. People were very nice to us. They immediately delivered some more furniture for the children. We got, of course, lots of food, and we had diapers delivered, 144 every week. That's a gross, and it is a gross, 144 diapers indeed. And so that's what happened. But, earlier I mentioned regret, and I mentioned some kind of disappointment. The Mustang. Loden green, vinyl top, 4 on the floor, 225 horses, 289 cubic inches. It had a suicide knob on the steering wheel. It was really cool. I had already gotten 3 speeding tickets in it. It was great. We traded it in for a VW Squareback. Not cool. And then it got worse. Then we bought an Opel. You remember Opels? They were imported by Buick just to irritate people. Anyway, that's what happened with the children. And I know children, it's wonderful. And 50 years ago, they were born. And even we had more madness this past Wednesday, where we met with them again and celebrated their birthday. But it was pandemic time, and so we did it via Zoom from Baton Rouge and Peru, and it was all good. But this is what is really sticking with me. The Mustang. That I wish I still had. The kids, they're here. They show up. The Mustang. That's what I wish I had. Thank you.
So Jerry, do your kids know how long you've harbored this grudge?
Yes, I'm pretty open with them, and I've let them know all kinds of things that have upset them. I can't let that go. I mean, it was beautiful.
Well, and then the other question is, did you actually get Dairy Queen that night?
No, we didn't. They took over our lives.
I'll have you know that my daughter was born not 13 hours after my wife and I went to Dairy Queen. To this day, we do not think of banana shakes the same way. Well, Jerry, thank you so much. And thanks to all of our speakers, all of our storytellers this evening. Can we give them all another virtual and silent round of applause?
Thank you.
And Natalie, I'm told, do we have a winner already?
I think I'm all set. I'm looking at so they were texting me and we actually have a winner and a runner up.
And this judging was overseen by the accounting firm of no.
Yes. So okay, so I'll do the Sorry, it's just a little hard because there's like two texts going on and it's a little slightly, but I've got it. So we have a runner-up, and that runner-up is Linda McKenney from Gansford. Yay! And the first place who will be joining us at the Grand Slam was Aaron Todd. Yay!
Very good.
Quite the early birthday present for your twins there, Aaron.
Thank you very much. I'm really honored, and everybody that spoke today did a great job. So it's a special honor to be chosen. Thank you, judges, and thank you, Adirondack Center for Writing and NCPR for putting it on.
Really,
Oh,
some
it's our
wonderful stories
pleasure.
tonight. Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. Bitch and I were actually just texting too. We're like, how is it possible that so many pregnancy stories and the theme was March Madness?
Yes.
Like, it wasn't new beginnings. It wasn't bundles of joy. It was March Madness. What a strange, that's one of the great magics of the Howl, is just that, like, you just never know what the stories are going to be. And then one time, unfortunately, we have what my husband continues to refer to as the death block. We had like 4 stories in a row that all were just like about these tragic deaths, and it was just like this live, and everyone's there with their glasses of wine and beer, just like, crying.
You know what, Natalie, though? The nice thing is when we do a Howl and the theme is Labor Day, we'll get a lot of basketball stories.
Yes. Well, thank you guys. Please don't forget to check out both North Country Public Radio and the Adirondack Center for Writing, 2 organizations that were still going strong throughout all of COVID, and we both still have all our programming going on. So please check us out. Thank you so much for coming, and we'll be in touch. And who knows, maybe this summer we could do a big outdoors one, maybe back at Keysville at that brew pub. That was really fun and outdoors. So keep in touch, and we'll see you all. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Thank you.
Stay well, everyone. Thank you so much.
I would